In the distant future, the city of Cynthia stood tall, its towering skyscrapers reaching the sky, while the streets below bustled with people who lived by the rules of logic, reason, and control. Emotions were something of the past, something people no longer believed in. It was a city built on technology, where feelings were suppressed and every action was calculated. This was how life was supposed to be: efficient, predictable, and free from the chaos that emotions often brought. In this world, Alara was one of the city's brightest minds. A scientist who believed in the power of logic, she spent her days designing systems to regulate emotions in the population. She worked for the Emotion Control Department, the most respected organization in Cynthia, tasked with ensuring that everyone remained calm and rational. The implants she developed were worn by every citizen, blocking unnecessary emotional responses. People rarely smiled, rarely cried. They lived, worked, and interacted with calm faces, their expressions neutral, as if they were all simply going through the motions. But Alara wasn't like the others. She had never questioned the rules. She had always believed in the importance of control, until the day she met him. It was a cold, grey afternoon when Alara attended an event at the city's main auditorium. It was a conference about the future of human enhancement, a subject she knew well. As she entered, she noticed a small crowd gathered around a man who seemed out of place. He was standing at the center of the room, speaking passionately. His words were full of emotion, a stark contrast to the sterile, controlled environment of Cynthia. This man was Darian, a historian who had spent his life researching the old ways of living. He believed in the value of emotions, in the power of human connection. He spoke of love, joy, sadness, and how these feelings shaped human history. While the crowd around him listened with blank expressions, Alara felt something stir inside her. His words struck a chord deep within her. Something she hadn't felt in years. She tried to push it away. She had always been told that emotions were a weakness, something to be controlled. But Darian's voice, full of warmth and sincerity, made her question everything she had ever known. She didn't understand why, but something inside her wanted to hear more. After the talk, Alara found herself standing at the edge of the room, her thoughts racing. She had never met someone like Darian before. He was so different from anyone in her life. Where the people of Cynthia were cold and logical, Darian seemed to embrace the full range of human feelings. His eyes, filled with passion, challenged the very foundation of everything Alara had ever believed. Darian noticed her standing there, and with a warm smile, he walked over to her. "You looked like you were deep in thought," he said gently. "What did you think of my talk?" Alara felt a slight flutter in her chest. She wasn't used to feeling nervous, but for some reason, this man made her heart race. She cleared her throat. "It was different," she said, her voice sounding strangely hesitant. "I've never heard anyone speak about emotions in such a way. It's hard to imagine a world like that." Darian chuckled softly. "It's hard for most people to imagine a world where feelings aren't controlled. But isn't that what makes us human? The ability to love, to feel pain, to laugh and cry. These things are what make us who we are." Alara hesitated. Her mind screamed at her to walk away, to stick to what she knew. But her heart, for the first time, told her to listen. Something in his words resonated with her in a way she couldn't explain. I don't know," she said quietly. "I've spent my entire life studying ways to control emotions. I believe it's for the greater good." Darian's expression softened. "I understand. But sometimes we forget that the things we try to control are what give life meaning. Emotions make us alive. Without them, we are just machines, going through the motions." Alara's mind raced. She had always believed in logic, in control. But now, in front of Darian, something deep inside her was awakening. Was he right? Was there more to life than simply being efficient and rational? Before she could say anything else, the conversation was interrupted. People around them were starting to leave, and the event was coming to an end. Darian smiled at her one last time. "Maybe we'll talk again sometime," he said. "I'd love to hear more of what you think." Ilara nodded, though she wasn't sure what to think herself. She watched him walk away, feeling a strange mixture of confusion and curiosity. Her mind was still clouded, but one thing was clear. Meeting. Darian had shaken her in a way she never expected, and now she couldn't help but wonder if this chance encounter might change everything. Days passed after the event, but Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that something inside her had changed. Her mind kept returning to the conversation she had with Darian. His words echoed in her head, the idea that emotions were not weaknesses, but powerful forces that made life worth living. She had spent so much of her life working to suppress feelings, believing that this was the only way to maintain order in the world. But now, a part of her wasn't so sure. At first, Ilara tried to ignore the feelings that were growing inside her. She had a job to do, a city to serve, and a future she had worked hard to secure. Emotions were simply distractions that could cloud her judgment, or so she had been taught. But Darian's ideas kept resurfacing in her thoughts, and the more she thought about them, the more intrigued she became. One afternoon, as she was working in her lab, Ilara received a message. It was from Darian. He wanted to meet again. Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected to hear from him, especially after such a brief encounter. Hesitantly, she accepted. When they met the next day at a quiet cafe, Darian greeted her with a warm smile, his eyes sparkling with the same passion that had captivated her before. They sat down, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The air was thick with an unspoken understanding, as though they both knew this was more than just a casual meeting. "I've been thinking about our conversation," Darian said, breaking the silence. "I can tell that you're torn, Ilara. You're someone who believes in control and logic. But I see something else in you. There's a part of you that longs for more. Am I wrong?" Ilara looked at him, surprised. She hadn't realized just how much he had noticed. She took a deep breath and nodded. I don't know. I've spent my life working to create a society where emotions are controlled, where people don't have to deal with the mess of feelings. But now I'm starting to wonder if that's enough, if it's really the best way." Darian's smile grew wider. "It's not easy, is it? Letting go of everything you've been taught. But think about it, Ilara. What if there's more to life than simply being efficient? What if the messy, unpredictable nature of emotions is what gives life its meaning?" Ilara hesitated. But emotions can be dangerous. They lead to chaos, to wars, to suffering. I've seen it happen. Darian nodded. "I'm not saying emotions are always perfect. They can cause pain, yes, but they also bring joy, love, and creativity. Without them, we wouldn't have art, music, or the bonds that tie us together. It's a risk, but it's also the beauty of being human." Ilara felt something stir inside her. Darian's words were challenging everything she had believed in. She had always seen emotions as something to control, to eliminate, but now she was starting to question whether that was the right path. As they continued talking, Ilara realized that Darian wasn't just speaking about emotions in general. He was speaking about life itself, the world she had known, where everything was orderly and controlled, suddenly seemed less appealing. She had never considered that there could be another way, a way where people could feel freely, without fear. Their conversations became more frequent. They met in secret, talking about everything from the beauty of love to the dangers of a world that suppressed feelings. With each meeting, Ilara felt her walls begin to crumble. Darian's presence made her question the very foundation of her beliefs. But even as she felt herself growing closer to him, Ilara knew she was walking a dangerous path. Cynthia was a city built on control. The authorities didn't tolerate dissent. If anyone found out about her growing bond with Darian, It could destroy everything she had worked for. She could lose her job, her reputation, and even her freedom. Still, Alara couldn't deny the pull she felt toward Darian. There was something about him, something that made her believe that there was more to life than just control. He made her feel alive, in a way she had never experienced before. The more they talked, the more Alara found herself wanting to learn more, to understand this world of emotions that she had never truly known. And the more she felt this connection with Darian, the harder it became to ignore the growing doubts inside her about the society she had always served. Was the life she had built truly the best way to live? Or was there a new, better way that she could help create? As Alara sat across from Darian, she realized that something inside her had changed forever. She wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was clear: her world was no longer the same. The days that followed were filled with confusion and uncertainty for Alara. She couldn't focus on her work, and when she tried, her thoughts kept drifting to Darian. The more time she spent with him, the more she realized how much she had been missing. He made her feel alive in a way no one ever had. For the first time, Alara began questioning everything she had ever known. Was it really right to control emotions? Was the society she had worked so hard to build truly the best way to live? But there was something else that troubled her deeply. Synthea, the city she loved, was built on control and order, and emotions were seen as dangerous. The emotion control department, where Alara worked, held the key to the future of the city. Her job was to make sure that everyone followed the rules. No emotions, no chaos. But Darian's ideas made her question everything, and she was starting to wonder if the city's way was wrong. One evening, as Alara sat alone in her apartment, she received a message from Darian. It was short and simple, but it filled her with both fear and excitement. "We need to talk. I have a plan." Alara's heart raced as she read the message. A plan. What was he talking about? She knew Darian wasn't someone who acted recklessly, but what could he be planning? They hadn't discussed anything that could change the city, but she had a feeling this was going to be big. The next day, they met in a quiet, hidden corner of the city. Darian's face was serious, his eyes full of determination. "I've been thinking a lot about what we've talked about," he began, "and I believe the only way to make a real change in this city is to expose the truth." Alara frowned. "Expose the truth? What do you mean?" Darian took a deep breath before continuing. "The emotion control department has a secret project, something that will ensure that emotions are fully suppressed in everyone, permanently. They've been working on it for years. If we don't stop them, it will be the end of human emotion, and the city will become nothing more than a place of robots, all working in perfect harmony, but without any soul." Alara felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard rumors about the project, but she never imagined it would go this far. "But how do you know about this?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "I have my sources," Darian replied, his voice steady. "I've been gathering information about the project for a while now. It's happening soon, and if we don't act fast, it will be too late." Alara's mind raced. She had always followed the rules. She had spent years working to ensure that emotions were kept under control, believing it was for the greater good. But now, Darian's words were sinking in. She had never imagined that the project she helped support could have such dark consequences. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to infiltrate the facility where they're running the experiment," Darian said. "We need to expose it to the public, to show them what's really happening. If we can stop this, we can bring back emotions, bring back life." Alara's heart pounded in her chest. This was dangerous, and if they were caught, the consequences could be severe. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that this might be the only way to change the world. The thought of a future without emotions was too terrifying to imagine. She couldn't let that happen. "I'm in," Alara said, her voice filled with determination. "I'll help you, but we have to be careful." If we're caught, it's over. Darian nodded, his expression serious. We'll have to move quickly, and we'll have to keep everything a secret. But together, we can do this. We can bring change. Elara felt a mix of fear and excitement. She had just crossed a line she could never go back from. There was no turning back now. She had joined forces with Darian, and together they would risk everything to expose the truth and fight for the future of the city. As they parted ways, that day, Elara couldn't help but feel a growing sense of hope. The plan was risky, but if it worked, they could change the course of history. And for the first time in a long time, Elara felt alive with purpose. The plan had been set into motion. Elara and Darian had been preparing for weeks. They had gathered information, studied the layout of the Emotion Control Department's secret facility, and planned their every move. It was a dangerous mission, but they were determined to expose the truth. The idea of a city without emotions, where people lived like machines, was something they could not allow to become reality. Elara's heart raced with fear and excitement as the day of their mission approached. She knew that if they were caught, the consequences would be severe. The authorities would never forgive them for challenging the city's rules. But as the days passed, the growing sense of purpose pushed away the fear. She had already crossed a line by working with Darian, and now there was no turning back. On the night of the operation, Elara and Darian met in the shadows, away from the eyes of the city. They were ready. Elara had carefully erased any trace of their plans from her records, and they had disguised themselves to blend into the crowd. The city was quieter than usual, as most of its residents were either at home or following their usual routines. "We have one shot at this," Darian said, his voice low and urgent. "We have to be quick and careful. If we're discovered, there's no way out." Elara nodded, her nerves tight. She was used to following rules, but this was different. This was about breaking them for something she believed in. She felt the weight of her decision as they made their way toward the facility. It was a high-security building, surrounded by guards and cameras, but Darian had carefully studied every detail of the place. He had a plan. They reached the facility's entrance without being spotted, but as they were about to enter, something unexpected happened. A voice came from behind them. "Going somewhere, Elara." Elara froze. It was Lena, one of her closest colleagues from the Emotion Control Department. Elara had trusted her, and she had always been a loyal friend. But now standing there in the shadows, Lena's cold expression made Elara's heart sink. "How did you—" Elara started, but Lena cut her off. "I've known for a while," Lena said, her voice low but firm. "I knew something was going on. You've been acting strange, Elara, and now I see you here, with him." She glanced at Darian with disdain. Elara's mind raced. How had Lena found out? She couldn't understand it. She had been so careful, so cautious, but now it was clear that her secret was out. "I didn't want to do this, Elara," Lena continued. "But you've crossed a line. The city needs control. Without it, everything will fall apart. You don't understand what you're risking." Darian stepped forward, his face hard with determination. "No, Lena. It's you who doesn't understand. People are meant to feel, to live fully. Control isn't life. It's a cage." Lena's eyes flashed with anger. "You're a fool," she spat. "And so are you, Elara. I never thought you'd betray us like this, but I'm not going to let you destroy everything we've worked for." Before Elara could respond, Lena pulled out a small device from her pocket. Elara's heart dropped as she realized what it was. It was a tracker, a tool used to alert the authorities of any unauthorized activity. If Lena activated it, their mission would be over, and they would be arrested on the spot. "You don't have to do this, Lena," Elara said, her voice pleading. "Please." But Lena only shook her head, her face set in stone. "I have to. You've made your choice, and now I'm making mine." In that moment, Ilara knew they had no time left. Darian grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the door. "Run!" he shouted. With no time to think, Ilara followed him as they sprinted into the facility. Behind them, they could hear the sound of Lena activating the tracker, followed by the echo of approaching footsteps. The authorities were coming. They had been betrayed, and now the only choice they had was to escape or face capture. As they ran through the hallways of the facility, Ilara's mind was spinning. She couldn't believe it. Lena had betrayed her. Someone she had trusted completely. But there was no time to dwell on that now. They had to keep moving. Heart pounding, Ilara focused on the mission. They couldn't let this setback stop them. The truth had to be exposed, no matter the cost. The sound of footsteps grew louder behind them, echoing through the dark hallways of the facility. Ilara's breath came in short, quick gasps as she ran beside Darian. Her mind was spinning, still trying to process the betrayal from Lena. She had trusted Lena, and now everything she had worked for felt like it was falling apart. But there was no time to dwell on the past. They had to focus on getting out, and they had to do it fast. Darian led the way, his steps confident despite the chaos. Ilara could feel his hand gripping hers tightly, a small comfort in the midst of everything. They turned corners, raced through corridors, and ducked into hidden spaces as the sounds of pursuit drew nearer. The tracker Lena had activated had already alerted the authorities, and soon they would be surrounded. "We need to get to the server room," Darian said, his voice steady despite the danger. "That's where they're keeping all the data on the emotion-suppressing project. If we can expose that, we can stop everything." Ilara nodded, her heart racing. She didn't know if they would make it out alive, but one thing was certain. If they didn't act now, the city would never know the truth. They had to succeed, no matter the cost. They reached the server room door, but as Ilara tried to open it, she heard a familiar voice over the intercom. "Ilara, please." Lena's voice crackled through the speakers. "You don't understand what you're doing. This isn't just about control. It's about saving the city. You're risking everything. Do you really want to destroy all we've worked for?" Ilara froze. Lena's words hit her like a punch to the gut. She had always believed that the emotion control department was doing the right thing, that keeping people emotionless was for the greater good. But now, standing at the door of the server room, she was beginning to wonder if Lena's vision of the world was really the right one. Darian turned to her, his face filled with concern. "Ilara, we don't have time. We can't let her stop us now." Ilara's mind raced as she thought about everything she had worked for, everything she had believed in. She had spent her life dedicated to making the city a place where emotions were controlled, where people lived without the risk of chaos. But now, she was beginning to see how that system had crushed something vital in humanity. It wasn't just about control. It was about denying people their humanity. "Ilara, please." Lena's voice came again, softer this time. "You don't have to do this. You don't have to be like him. You've been a part of this system for so long. Think of all the good we've done. The city is safer because of us." The words echoed in Ilara's mind. She had believed in them for so long. But now, the image of a city without emotions, where people were no longer able to love or feel, seemed wrong. It wasn't safety that they were offering. It was a life without freedom, a life without true connection. She turned to Darian, her eyes filled with uncertainty. What if she's right? What if we're wrong? Darian's grip on her hand tightened. "Ilara, this isn't about being right or wrong. It's about what you believe. It's about what kind of world you want to live in." Ilara felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She had never imagined she would be standing at this crossroads, torn between everything she had been taught and everything she now felt was right, the safety and stability of the city, or the chance to break free and let people feel again. For a long moment, Ilara stood there, torn between two worlds. But as she looked into Darian's eyes, something inside her clicked. She realized that she couldn't go back. No matter the cost, she had to fight for a world where emotions were allowed to exist. With a deep breath, Elara made her decision. "Let's do it," she said, her voice steady. "We can't let them control us anymore." Darian smiled, his eyes filled with pride. Together, they pushed open the server room door, ready to expose the truth and change the future of the city. Forever. Elara's heart pounded in her chest as she and Darian entered the server room. The walls were lined with rows of computers and wires, glowing faintly in the dark. This was it, the place where everything was controlled, the heart of the system that kept the city emotionless. This was the key to stopping the project, the key to saving the future. Darian moved quickly, heading straight to the main console. "I'll upload the data to the public server," he said, his voice calm despite the danger. "This will expose everything, the true nature of the project, the harm it will do to the people of this city. Once the truth is out, we'll have no choice but to fight." Elara nodded, her mind racing. She had always believed in the importance of order, but now, standing in front of the truth, she felt a burning desire to change everything. The idea of a future without emotions had once seemed necessary to her, but now it felt like a prison, a world where people could no longer truly live. As Darian typed furiously on the keyboard, Elara kept a lookout. The facility was massive, and they had no idea how much time they had before the authorities would arrive. Lena's betrayal still stung in her heart, but Elara couldn't afford to think about that now. This was their only chance to make a difference. Loud noise echoed down the hallway. Elara's pulse quickened. "The guards were coming. We don't have much time," Darian said, not looking up from the screen. "I've sent the files. Now, we need to get out of here before they lock us in." Elara's eyes darted to the door. She could hear the distant sound of footsteps and voices approaching. They were too close now. The alarms would go off soon, and the whole facility would be on lockdown. Darian grabbed her hand and pulled her towards the back of the room. "We'll take the emergency exit. It leads to a hidden tunnel. We can use it to get out." As they hurried through the corridors, Elara's mind raced. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. The truth was out there now. The city would know about the project, about the emotion-suppressing experiment that was being pushed onto its people. It was no longer just about Elara and Darian. This was about the future of everyone in Synthia. But even as they rushed through the hallways, Elara knew the fight was far from over. Exposing the truth was just the beginning. The authorities wouldn't let it go easily. They had already lost control of the situation, and Elara knew they would do whatever it took to silence the rebellion. "We need to get to the people," Elara said, her voice firm. "We can't stop here. We need to show them the truth. Show them that they don't have to live like this anymore." Darian nodded, his expression serious. "I agree, but it won't be easy. The government will try to shut us down. We'll have to move fast and get the people on our side." They reached the emergency exit and hurried through the hidden tunnel. The sound of guards chasing them echoed behind them, but they were determined to escape. As they emerged from the tunnel, they were greeted by the sight of the city. The towering buildings, the empty streets, the quiet that had once seemed so peaceful. But now, Elara saw it differently. The city was trapped, controlled by a system that didn't allow its people to live freely. As they made their way toward the heart of the city, Elara felt a sense of urgency building inside her. They couldn't let this moment pass. They had to act, and they had to act fast. They had to make the people see the truth, to show them that there was another way, a better way to live. Darian turned to her, his face filled with determination. "This is it, Elara. We can't turn back now. The city will never be the same again." Elara nodded, her eyes filled with resolve. Together, they would fight for the future, for a world where emotions were free and people could truly live. The rebellion had begun, and there was no turning back. The streets of Synthia were eerily quiet as Elara and Darian moved through the city, their footsteps the only sound in the empty night. They had just escaped the facility, and now they were on a mission to spread the truth to the people. The Vitar data was already out there, exposing the emotion-suppressing project that had been hidden for so long. But that was just the first step. Now, they needed to make sure the city knew the truth and could finally break free from the control that had held it captive for years. As they approached the central plaza, Ilara couldn't help but look around at the city she had once thought was perfect. The towering skyscrapers, the neatly organized streets, the calm, emotionless faces of the people. It all seemed so different now. She had once believed that this order was the right way to live, that people should be controlled and kept from feeling too much. But now, standing in the heart of the city, she realized that it wasn't the way life was meant to be. Darian turned to her, his face filled with determination. "We can't stop now, Ilara. The truth is out, but it's only the beginning. We need to wake the people up, show them what they've been living through." Ilara nodded. She had never imagined she would be standing here, leading a rebellion against the very city she had helped create. But as the events unfolded, she knew there was no other choice. The city needed to change. People needed to feel again. The pair made their way to the central communication hub, the heart of the city's information network. It was heavily guarded, but Ilara and Darian had a plan. They needed to broadcast the truth to every screen, every home, every corner of the city. The people needed to see what was really happening behind the walls of the emotion control department. They needed to understand that they didn't have to live in fear of their emotions anymore. As they approached the building, Ilara's heart raced. She knew they had to move fast. The government wouldn't take kindly to their rebellion, and they would do anything to stop them. But this was the only way. They had to make the people see the truth, to show them that they could live without fear of feeling too much. Inside the hub, Darian quickly hacked into the system, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Ilara kept watch, her eyes darting around the room as the seconds ticked by. They couldn't afford to be caught now. The city's entire future depended on this moment. Darian looked up at her, his face serious. "We're ready. It's time to send the message." With a single press of a button, the broadcast went live. The truth was now out there, for everyone to see. The video showed the files they had stolen from the facility, the secret project, the plans to control every emotion in the city, and the faces of those who had been part of it. The video also showed Ilara and Darian standing together, side by side, telling the people of Synthea that they didn't have to live in fear anymore. The broadcast spread quickly, reaching every corner of the city. People began to gather in the streets, their faces filled with confusion, fear, and curiosity. They had never seen anything like this before. For the first time, they were allowed to feel. The walls that had been built around them for so long were starting to crumble. As Ilara and Darian stood in the plaza, watching the city react, they felt a sense of hope that they had never known before. The people of Synthea were waking up, and change was finally within reach. But even as the crowd began to gather, the sound of sirens filled the air. The authorities were coming. They had to act fast. "Ilara," Darian said urgently, grabbing her hand. "It's now or never. We have to keep moving. We can't let them stop us." Ilara squeezed his hand, her heart filled with a new strength. "No matter what happens, we've done it. The truth is out there. The people will fight for it." Azim. They ran through the streets. Ilara could feel the change in the air. The city was no longer the same. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she felt free. They had sparked a revolution, and nothing could stop it now. The rebellion had begun, and with it, the dawn of a new era. A world where people could feel, love, and live fully. A world where emotions were no longer seen as a weakness, but as the very thing that made life worth living. And as Ilara and Darian ran through the streets, hand in hand, they knew that the future, no matter how challenging, would be filled with hope.